Hello. What follows is a six-part first-person recounting of the life of Tom Acker. Father Tom, at the time of this video, was 92, and the video was made in May of 2022. His life is a fascinating journey through several countries, including Nepal. Along the way, Father Tom Acker of the Society of Jesus has been president of 2 universities. He is a scientist with a doctorate in biology from Stanford University. He has been consulted by the highest levels of 2 governments. At every turn, though, from the earliest age, as you'll see, he has been the problem child for many of his superiors. When we met, he was serving as a parish priest and busy saving a failing parish school, which he then revived and caused it to blossom where it had been on its last gasp. Toward the end of these videos, he calls me his friend. I am very proud of that designation. I should mention I'm not Catholic. My work involving sound and video systems brought me into contact with hundreds of pastors and priests and some imams and rabbis. I have met some outstanding people who have taken up the work that they see God has called them to, and Father Tom is such a person. Please enjoy with me the story of Father Tom Acker of the Jesuits. So this is the beginning of discussion with Father Tom Acker, and we're going to begin part 2. Part 1 dealt with Father Tom's life up until the point when he was a doctoral student at Stanford in biology. So we'll just continue.
Steve, just call me Father Tom. That's the easier way.
Okay. All right.
I want to tell the story about Gordon Ferris because it was very interesting. He became a very close friend. We had to choose a topic for dissertation. I chose working on a little group of insects that you see around the lights at night. They're called neuropterans, green lacewings. They come to lights at night. But we became good friends. And one day I walked into his office and he's reading a book, The Prospect of Immortality. And I looked at him and I said, Ferris, what are you doing reading that book? Because he knew that I was going on to become a priest, although he thought I was a priest already. It didn't make any difference. And he put it down and I said to Ferris, if I ever find you on your deathbed, do you think I ought to baptize you just in case? And he looked at me, thought for a minute, and he said to me, yes, if you ever find me on my deathbed, you baptize me just in case. Never forgot that statement because it had a great effect later on. About 6 months later, I was collecting insects in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I came across a group, I still remember them, Cialis californica, they call them smoke flies. First time I had ever come across them, and I collected every one I could. And I came back to the lab, and I said, where's Ferris today? And they said, well, he wasn't feeling good today. So he took himself to the hospital. Okay. So about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I went down to the hospital to see him. And there he is, and he sits up on the bed, and I had a bottle of insects with him. And I said, Ferris, look what I got. Cialis californica, smoke flies. I collected every one I could. Did I make a mistake? Did I clean out the population? And he just looked at me and said, Tom, you can never clean out a population. You did exactly what you should do. The last words he said, grabbed his heart and fell back on the bed. And that was it. I called the crash cart, And the crash cart came in, and I said to the nurse, they were working on him, he told me I should baptize him if I ever found him on his deathbed. She looked at me, she said, I can't talk to you now. So I stepped back. And about a half a minute, she looked at me, she said, baptize him now. So I baptized him, just in case. But let me tell you, he would have gone to heaven no matter what happened. He was just a good, good man. So I lost my thesis advisor, and that kind of dramatic, because I had a certain number of years I had to finish that doctorate, because I had to go back to theology. And then I got in touch with Don Abbott, the finest teacher I've ever had in my life, bar none. And I've had a lot of Jesuit teachers, I've had a lot of lay teachers. He was the best teacher I ever had in my life. He said, I'll take you on as my graduate student until I get someone new. And so he did. He helped me through it. I worked as a graduate assistant down in Pacific Grove at the Marine Station down there. And about a year later, they hired a man to replace Ferris. Very famous man. His name is Paul Ehrlich. And Paul Ehrlich was also an agnostic. And so was Don Abbott. All my friends were agnostics. And we had wonderful times together. Paul Ehrlich is especially noted for writing books on the population bomb. We're just overpopulating the earth.
He's a Malthusian.
That's it. And he was a wonderful guy. And he's still my good friend. I'm still in touch with him all the time. Ferris, Don Abbott later died. I remember talking to him after I had my doctorate already, but I called him on the phone once. He was dying, and he said, well, Tom, this will probably be the last conversation we'll ever have. And I said to him, Don, I don't think so. I'll see you again. And he said, well, you know that you and I never agreed on that. And I said, I know that, but I'll see you again. And the last words he said to me is, I hope you're right. And I said, I am. So I'll see him again. I have no fear. Another great, great man. Anyway, I finished up my doctorate under Paul Ehrlich. Such a gracious man. He said, I don't know anything about neuropterans, these lace-wing insects. Just get done. I'll approve almost anything that you do. So we published the article, it got done, and then I had to go back to theology. Oh, what a tough time that was. What a tough time it was. At Stanford, I was a free man. I had a car, I could go where I wanted, I did what I wanted. Now I come back into the Jesuit order, and they tie me down.
So now we're dealing with the obedience part.
More than that. More than that. Look, I'm a young man, and out at Stanford, you meet a young lady, and she was outstanding. She was the secretary, a biology librarian, and there's no question I fell in love with her, and she fell in love with me, and what to do? But I still felt I had to go on to become a priest, or I had to follow it through. But I was still free to leave the Jesuit order, because the vows you have are not perpetual. They are in a way, and they're not. If I say I don't want to stay in the order, they can get you out. Once you become a priest, you got more perpetual types of things. And so for 4 years, I struggled. For 3 years, I struggled. She's out there, and I'm here, and I'm going through theology, and they're teaching it all in Latin, and I don't remember a bit of Latin any longer, and I'm having a hard time. I'm having a very hard time. And it comes down to about 3 or 4 months before you're ordained, and they ask the question, do you want to be ordained? And I had to say, I don't know. And they say, well, we can't ordain you if you don't know. And toughest decision I probably ever had to make in my life. She's out there saying, if you leave, I'll join you. I had a doctorate. I could have gotten a job easily enough. Finally came across a passage, Steve. It changed everything. It was Amos the prophet. And he was living in a little place called Tekoa outside of Jerusalem, a sheep herder, also a tender of sycamore trees. And God wanted him to go and be a prophet. And he was fighting, and I was fighting. And the line is basically, you can read it in Amos. When the lion roars, who does not tremble? When the Lord God speaks, who will not prophesy? And I said, oh, you got me. You got me. The Lord said, I want you to go on. So I did. I said, yes, I want to become a priest. Toughest decision I made in my life. I did something I probably shouldn't have done. Half hour before I got ordained, I called this young lady on the phone. Her name was Joanne, and said, Joanne, I love you and I always will love you, but I'm going to get ordained. And that was the last conversation I had with her for a while. She later got married, had 4 children, 3 adopted and 1 natural. And I got ordained. Was it a good decision? Steve, I can't really give you that answer. I'll have to wait to see what God says. That's where it is. So anyway, I had to finish the 4th year of theology. Met some great people, and met one guy that is especially interesting. In 4th year theology, you go out on assignment, and I went to Ohio Northern, and there I met Clarence Rivers. You probably never heard of Clarence Rivers.
No.
He was an African-American priest, and he could sing. He could sing. And he taught me a little bit how to sing. He influenced my life. He was just very good. You're getting ready to take another quit. Want to quit again?
No. I was just going to ask you a question about the timeline. So these the year that you were ordained as a priest.
1963.
Okay.
1963, and then they had one more year to finish up theology. And then I was sent to Cleveland just for the summer. It's a Jesu parish. And during that summer, I had to do part of a census for the parish. And then they sent me off to tertianship, which is another, it didn't take very well for me. I wanted to do stuff. But one of the interesting secrets that I haven't told many people, during theology, I said, you've got to let me go up to Indiana University and go through the biology and go to I got to keep up on my biology, otherwise it's gone. 4 years without it, I'm gone. And so once a month, they sent me up, I could go up to Indiana University, to Jordan Hall, which was the biology library. Guess what was upstairs on the 3rd floor of Jordan Hall? The Kinsey Sex Research Institute. Well, after reading about 4 hours down there, I said, I got to go up and see what that place is all about. So I went upstairs and I introduced myself. I have a doctorate in biology, and I worked on the south end of a northbound insect. I worked in sexology, and I met Dr. Pomeroy, Wardell Pomeroy. He was the author of that Kinsey report in 1947-48. Kinsey, Christensen, and Pomeroy, and he became my close friend. And so I used to go up there in the afternoons and work through their library to write more on that stuff. I think if the Jesuits ever knew that, they wouldn't let me be a priest.
So this period sounds, um, the tertiary thing you talked about, that's part of your formation as a
That is
Jesuit.
correct, yes.
Now, these steps along the way, how are they coordinated within the Jesuits? Who is it? Are you assigned an advisor, or is there a committee, or what's the decision-making process for Father Tom taking a step here or a step there? How does that work?
Well, you keep shifting. When you go to the novitiate, you have a master of novices. He's in charge of you for the 2 years. Then you start your college, and you have a dean, and you report to the dean. Then you go to West Baden, outside of French Lick, and there you also have a dean. Then once I started my studies at Stanford or Fordham, you report to the dean of studies for what you do. But then when I went out to Stanford, I lived in a Jesuit house at Santa Clara University. I was under the rector there, but the provincial guided what I was doing out there at Stanford. Although he told me, you either finish in 4 years or you don't finish. You got to get done. Go back to theology, you're under the dean of the theology at that point.
So these different people, the dean,
Yeah.
the rector, these. Oh, well, the rector wasn't in the Jesuit order, right?
Yes.
Oh, the rector was. So, do these? Is that their job? Is that their position, or do they do that plus other things?
Well, they do other things too. The deans, of course, handle all the Jesuits going through at that time. I was now 3 years behind my normal class. So I was into the Jesuit order. The classmates I entered with got ordained 3 years before I did, because I had 6 years of teaching, or 6 years of what they call regency. 1 year of teaching, 1 year at Fordham, and 4 years at Stanford. Most of them had 3 years of teaching. So I got out of whack. People say you've always been out of whack. And that's true. I'm always on the edge. I'm on the edge.
All right. Well, this brings us up to sort of a point where we could maybe stop part 2 and begin part 3 in a second, because at this point you are an ordained priest, you have a doctorate, and things are going to probably the kind of assignments you get are probably going to change quite a bit.
That's right.
And so at this point we will conclude part 2.
Okay.